easy. Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My dear Professor, thank you so much for this incredible opportunity to speak to you all about Nigeria's fuel subsidy. The present situation is that we have the subsidy, but in kind of an informal way. It has been announced that it has been removed, but let's delve into it. I promise that this presentation will last between 5 minutes minimum to maybe 6, 7, 9, or 10 minutes. So I know you hearing this would give you an idea that it's definitely not going to be long, and I promise that it won't be boring. I'm still trying to compose myself. Yeah?
No worries.
All right. So fuel subsidy, Nigeria as a case study. As many of us here know, the term subsidy or fuel subsidy is not new to most of us. I so much love the definition by the World Bank, which says that fuel subsidy is the introduction of policies that decreases energy prices through value transfer to economic agents. This was given by World Bank in the year 2010. And you can see that in simple terms, it means selling energy much less than the market cost. Government try to find their ways in trying to show that energy can be cheaper than the way they produced it. And that is the beginning of why a lot of interest is being given toward the subject of the topic, energy subsidy. I remember in our last week's lecture on climate change mitigation, the subsidy falls under the economic tools, which is also known as the market-based tools, as a tool for mitigating climate change. So you can see that fuel subsidy is actually a big subject, and it's very appealing to a lot of countries, a lot of individuals, and to also me. It's very appealing to me. Globally, subsidies were estimated to about $7 trillion in the year 2022. This was given by the International Monetary Fund. And you know something? This amount was projected to rise by about $8.2 trillion in the year 2030, mostly because there is an increase in energy consumption in emerging markets. So that means the subject of fuel subsidy will continue to remain relevant, not just in Nigeria, but in the global stage. And of course, some economists see it as a problem, while other people continue to see how it could be solved. So bringing it back and contextualizing it to my own beloved country, Nigeria, fuel subsidies, according to a report I found by Reuters, the fuel subsidies amounted to a whopping sum of $7 billion in the year 2022. I remember the then Minister of Finance, Zainab Shamsuna, talking about the impact and talking about how they spent $7 billion between the months of January to September, all on fuel subsidy. That is, within just 9 months, Nigeria has spent $7 billion in doing one thing, fuel subsidy. So if you notice the opportunity cost of such spendings on other development projects, they are very huge. This amount that I'm telling you that was spent between these 9 months is more than double the health budget in the country. This poses a question that, are we actually spending right on the topic of subsidy, fuel subsidy? So the reality is that government couldn't sustain this because the NNPC, which means the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, has been suffering. The government at some point could not settle it, and it has been affecting the operations of this company, oil company. So, and as such, the government could not sustain it. For more efficient operations of the NNPC, the government has to find a way to solving the issue of subsidy. So on May 29, 2023, Nigeria saw the coming of a new president. Very bold. The president, after he was sworn in, he made the announcement in his own word, I say, subsidy is gone. And that is the beginning of the trouble, or rather the situation that Nigeria is presently in. He said subsidy is gone because we could not sustain it anymore. And then we began to see the effect. One, the increase in the PMS price, petroleum motor spirit price. Petroleum used to be, in Naira terms for my fellow Nigerians, petroleum used to be about 246 Naira. As of then when he made the announcement. Now it has surged, it has increased to an amount of, yesterday I was talking to my friend, I asked him, how much do you buy petroleum? And he was telling me $7.90 to my shock. That is about half a dollar. From 0.15 or 0.25 to now $0.45. So that means it has increased to over 100%. So people are suffering because petroleum price in Nigeria is the main driver of living cost, main driver of a lot of things. And as a result, the country is experiencing an increase in inflation. Presently, data given by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics states that the inflation rate is at 29.9%. For people that know Nigeria, know that for it to experience an inflation of 29.9%, that means we are in trouble because people are struggling compared to the minimum salary. Again, the effect of the announcement of the president, the fuel subsidy removal, of course there is lower consumption and productivity. We used to consume about over 2 billion liters of petroleum every day. Now to a statistics of about 1.2, 1.3 billion liters. So like the consumption has reduced. Also reduced congestion on the road. This is a very beautiful one because it used to be very congested, the roads where everybody was driving. So because petroleum is more expensive, of course people have to find more ways of minimizing their travels. So the reality is that people are really, really suffering because of the removal of the subsidy. But why do we care about the subsidy? Of course, fuel subsidy, we just have to care for it because they are intended to protect consumers by putting prices low. But the reality is that they come with sizable fiscal consequences, creating distortion, economic distortion. Politicians using economic solutions to solve political problems, creating economic problems by solving political solutions. Why do they do this? Just to gain political goodwill of the people, mostly. Research have shown that different literatures I have went through, just to gain political goodwill. So this creates distortions that we have to be concerned about it. And of course, prone to corruption. It creates a lot of corruption. And then another interesting thing is that it leads to greater pollution. Fuel subsidy leads to greater pollution. I will tell you why. So we all need to know that the removal of subsidy is critical in every nation that wishes to advance or to position itself very well, especially for advancement and for the transition, and to avoid market failure. The reasons is that according to the International Monetary Fund, raising fuel prices to their fully efficient levels reduces projected global fossil fuel emission. Because of course, when people are consuming less petroleum, that means we'll have less emission. This is one aspect of it. Another aspect of how this can contribute to pollution is that the money that they pay for subsidies, if they can put that money in the renewable energies, that means we can have a cleaner environment, a more robust renewable energy industry. In 2009, the G20 countries called for a phase out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies in all countries, and reaffirmed this again in 2012. At COP26 that was held in Glasgow in the year 2021, countries agreed to accelerate efforts to phase out these subsidies. That means the subsidies are a problem globally, not just to my own country, Nigeria. And we have seen the effect of this in countries like India, Morocco, Saudi, among others, and even in the EU by the introduction of the ETS, the emission trading scheme, which forces industries to pay for carbon emissions. So you may be wondering, why should Nigeria be left out? Or why should Nigeria not do the same? Why should Nigeria not phase out? I remember the quote of my mentor, Balawant, who is the chief investment officer of the NNPC, once said in the US, that Nigeria's power resources has the ability, or the abundance of energy resources in Nigeria can power the whole of New York for 120 consecutive years. This means that we have abundance of oil in Nigeria, and we have to just maximize profit. We have to find a way to make it efficient in such a way that we can have a cleaner environment and we can have more revenue for the country. Yes, subsidies are so hard to kill, of course, because the government would not want to lose their political goodwill. And of course, people also like it because removing it always creates backlash. In the year 2000, Nigeria faced a lot of, the government faced a lot of backlash from the people because it announced the removal of subsidy. And so it couldn't, the government cannot control the pressure. We have seen in countries like Jordan in the 1998, Indonesia, for instance, if you check on the news all around, people are always resistant to the issue of fuel subsidy removal, and this is making it so hard. And similar issues are why even EU couldn't phase out fuel subsidy. Maybe in the year 2030 there will be a total non-fuel subsidy regime, but presently a lot of countries find it so hard to do away with that. So ladies and gentlemen, my recommendations in the context of my country, Nigeria, the subsidy has already been removed. So my recommendations are on the fact that it has been removed, not on how it should be removed. My dear friend, we were arguing that because of the trouble that Nigeria is presently in, I would have suggested that the government should have done it in a better way. But since it has been removed, here is what I have to say. That the government should introduce economic relief programs that will cushion the effect. Also, the government should be very transparent to people as to what it is doing with the savings from the fuel subsidy. Since we are saving, what are we doing with it? That will give more hope to the people, and that would make people believe that actually the government caters for them and wants to transition itself and position the energy industry in a very competitive way in the world. And this I quote from the IMF, that institutional reforms that depoliticize energy pricing, such as the introduction of automatic pricing mechanism, this would really help, because the volatility of petroleum price in Nigeria is just something, it's very crazy. Because the markets, everybody can operate, the market determine, everybody is allowed to determine their prices. So the volatility, you will just sleep today at 790, and tomorrow you wake up and they will tell you have to pay 1,000 for a liter. So I think if we could be able to do this, then we would be able to see some significant development. Increase in minimum wage, it could really help. My country has a very low minimum wage. So the reality is that the minimum wage cannot do a lot to the people. And because this fuel subsidy has been removed, that is why we are even seeing more inflation, and that is why we are suffering more. All right, finally, the government can tap from the CNG, compressed natural gas. We have it a lot in Nigeria. We have it a lot. So it's just the government to utilize those spendings and find a way to maximize this abundance of these resources so that people could benefit, and the reliance on petroleum and oil should really come. At this point, I want to thank you, Professor, for the opportunity for me to share my insights on the fuel subsidy. Thank you so much for your audience, my dear classmates. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. Very